This is another episode of Standup Comedy, your host and MC, celebrating 40-plus years on the fringe of show business. Stories, interviews, and comedy sets from the famous and not so famous. Here's your host and MC, Scott Edwards.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. I recently had a chance to interview a very funny and talented comic magician, Christopher Barnes, for one of my other podcasts called The Magic Hat, a comedy magic discussion. And he was so interesting because he's taken his comedy and his magic and he's done some playwriting and he's done some great videos that I'm going to edit a couple shows together and present him on this podcast. So I think you'll find it entertaining and interesting and some great information on being a professional entertainer. But we talk about a couple different things that I found fun and I wanted to share it. So thanks for your patience and listen to this great interview with comic magician Christopher Barnes. Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk to one of the funniest comic magicians out there, Christopher Barnes.
Oh, thank you. The applause. I love it.
Well, Chris, we're so excited to have you on the show. You've been doing so many things with your talents, and I'd like to jump into it. I love your flamboyant style. It's very entertaining, bright, colorful. As I mentioned, you haven't actually worked for me, but I did my research. Let's go back to the beginning. How did you kind of get started in magic back in Atlanta?
I think it's like every magician story. So I got the uncle gave me a magic set when I was 9 years old. And that's pretty much how it all started. I had a...
That's a nice short story for the podcast, right? And then there was a magician that always came to my school, David Ginn, who was an elementary school performer, and that plus the magic set, I became obsessed, and it's been nonstop ever since. Now, you were starting at 9, and you were actually correct. I've interviewed several comic magicians at this point, and they all kind of started around the same age, the same way. Most of them started off with kid shows, maybe did a few school shows. Did you follow that path? At what point did you kind of go pro? Basically. So my original, and I still do magic for children. That's like 90% of my bread and butter. My mother was a kindergarten teacher, and so my earliest audiences were little kids because I could just go into her classroom and do it. And my hero at the time was the magician who came to our school, so he did kids magic. So I immediately started doing magic for kids. I did my first quote unquote professional show for probably $25, which even in the 90s was not a lot of money. That was way underpriced. Accounting for inflation, it might have been $50. But it was for teachers at our school whose child was having a birthday or some church shows and things. But those were my quote unquote first professional gigs. And then I kind of dropped it all. I was also involved in community theater, high school theater. So I went to college at New York University to be an actor. I was going to be a famous movie star. That was the goal. And then, of course, that led to me being a bartender. The real Hollywood story.
Yeah, basically. And then, back when I was growing up, every Christmas and birthday was I don't know if you remember. Well, I don't know. Hankley's Magic Factory was the place to shop. It no longer exists for reasons, but I would make lists of what I wanted for Christmas and birthdays, and I'd get some of it. And then one day while bartending, I was like, "Hey, I can buy my own magic." I don't know. I was like, "I'm an adult. I can buy whenever, whatever I want." And then for some reason, that just led to me saying, "Why am I not actually just doing this?" So it started kind of part time on weekends while I was still bartending. But then it eventually became full time, and now that's just what I do, which is kind of crazy.
Well, it's interesting because you're absolutely correct. Most magicians, male or female, start off kind of the same way and follow the same path where they're doing shows for friends, or you had a little bit of a leg up because of your mom being a teacher allowed you to perform in schools probably before most did. But it does usually lead to the church show or the talent show at the school or something. And I think that the fact that you decided to go into theater, and I alluded to it earlier, you're a successful playwright. I think that's so awesome. I want to chat about that a little later. But as a magician, you're doing these shows. At what point do you feel like you were adding the comedy aspect? Because you're now known as a very, very funny comic magician. But there's a big difference between that kind of high school straight magic and the comedy magic that you're known for now. How did that transition come about?
Yeah, it was sort of always there a bit because, so here's my quick anecdote. Speaking of playwriting, I was in a playwriting class in college. So every week you wrote like a 10-page play, and then you'd pass it around in class. Everybody would read it, and, you'd get comments. And the very first assignment, I was like, I'm going to make people cry. Oh man, I'm going to make them feel. I'm going to get them. So I wrote this really meaningful, deep, beautiful piece, passed it out. Everybody started reading it, and they laughed their asses off. Oh, can I say that? They laughed their butts off.
No, you can say whatever, but that's hilarious.
Oh, okay. They laughed the entire time, and I was like defeated. I was like, oh, I didn't do what I wanted. I wanted them to cry. Other people have to work really hard to make people laugh, and somehow I accidentally do it. So so then I just sort of realized it's sort of a superpower to make people laugh by accident. So then it's just always kind of been natural. So for me, it was just a natural fit. It's just I've always been funny. I've always loved magic, and so pairing the two together just sort of and by the way, I'm not patting myself on the back about always being funny. I don't always try. People just laugh at me for some reason. I don't know why. My face or something. I don't know.
You alluded to the fact that it's your superpower, and I will say that anybody in the comedy business, as I've been for over 40 years, there is a power to taking strangers from a quiet mood to a happy, endorphin-filled happiness. There's a real power in that. And
100%.
And engaging with the audience means that when you make them feel good and they laugh out loud, it makes you feel good. So it's kind of a selfish adrenaline hit. And
100%, yeah.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, that it is fascinating that you were trying so hard to bring one emotion and another emotion came out. So you mentioned this was in the college years. So I would assume that most of your magic up until that point might have had funny moments, but it was pretty much straight magic. And in the college years, let's say in your late teens, early 20s, you kind of found your superpower.
It definitely came more and more over time. I wouldn't even call it. It's probably when you're starting out. I wasn't even me when I started out. I was that magician that came to my school. I was David Copperfield. You're like everybody else other than you because you just sort of see what they do and think that, oh, I'm supposed to be dancing around with beautiful women around me or whatever.
So what? I'm going to interrupt and just say you kind of created a character. And that the character was the magician, it wasn't the real Chris Barnes. Would that be kind of your transition story?
The biggest moment for me in terms of what I do, because like I said, the majority of what I did starting out and even now is magic for children. And I just was, it was a big, I think anybody who's involved in comedy or magic or both is you have to figure out, who you are. What is your point of view? What is your character? And there's an old saying in magic, your character on stage is just a bigger version of you. But I think magicians kind of confuse that and think that just means I'm going to talk louder. But it doesn't. That's not what it is. It's about kind of like objectively looking at your life and yourself and saying, what am I? A bigger version of you can actually be shyer and quieter. It could actually be darker and, you know, whatever you feel you are. And I got lucky because my mother called me one day. My nephew at the time was like 6, and she was telling me how he asked her, why does Uncle Christopher get to live up in New York all by himself? And she said, because he's a grown up, he could do what he wants. And my nephew apparently said, he's not a grown up, he's just a big kid. And at the time, I was like trying to figure out, what is my character? Who am I? And when he said that, I was like, oh, that's it. And all the clues were there, because I have money. I don't pay my bills on time, even if I have the money. I know, like, I got pulled over by a cop. He's like, why didn't you, re-sign up for your registration? And I literally looked at the cop and said, I'll be honest, I'm not good at being a grown-up. And by the way, I got away with it. Somehow he just gave me a warning.
Oh, that's so funny. Well, but I think realizing...
So I am a big kid.
Yeah, but I think realizing that is a smart thing. I think a lot of actors, and you went to acting school, they have to figure out who they are, what their voice is, whether it's an acting voice, a comedy voice, their magic voice. In magic, it's the persona that you're presenting to the audience. So Chris, you were talking about how you were starting in, after high school and into college, you kind of found your comedy voice. Were you doing that through written patter and verbal expression, or because you're kind of a bigger than life cartoon kid, was it kind of physical humor? What was it that worked for you, or you started with first?
It's sort of like like, do you script or do you not script? My answer is yes. The answer is whatever works for you, but also it's trick by trick. Like some tricks, for some reason, I have to sit down and write a script, but some, it just depends. But for me, my process, and this is whether I'm doing magic for children or whether I'm doing, like a comedy club magic for adults. My first step right off the bat is just asking, is the trick itself funny? Because 99% of the time, I think the answer is no. Like, you tear and restore a newspaper, that's not funny at the heart of the trick. Cut and restore a rope, that's not funny. And so once the answer is 99% of the time no, my next question is just, how do I make it funny? So instead of like worrying about the scripting or everything I'm doing around the trick, because I think most magicians who do comedy magic, they take a standard trick and they add a bunch of funny comedy lines to it. But my goal is to start from a place of, can I make the trick itself, at the heart of the trick, can I make a comedy concept around it? So that basically I'm ahead of the game. So on top of now an already funny trick, I'm adding funny lines, I'm adding funny bits of business, so that it's like cherries on top of an already funny sundae. That's a terrible metaphor, but
no, but I get it. And I'm going to bring up an example on one of your very funny videos under the pudding classic. You take like the thimble trick, which is a prestidigitation illusion of moving a thimble from around your finger and doing different gags with it. And in your case, you created what looks like a fake pudding, like your finger was dipped in pudding, and you use that to do the same trick. So it's the same illusion, but by changing the thimble to what looks like pudding, you're adding humor. So is that a good example?
Yeah, it's pretty much an example of what I always try to do, which is two things. Number one, I generally try to make sure that my magic never, ever really looks or feels like anything another magician has done. And it can be as simple as putting some brown paint on a thimble so it looks like pudding instead of a thimble. So that, and then the other one is just my favorite comedy concept in terms of like sketch comedy. It's called mapping, which the idea is if you put two ideas together that don't necessarily fit, it's often funny. Like Big Bird as an accountant. That could be, or Hitler as a kindergarten teacher. Like these things don't fit, and so generally you'll get something funny. And so almost everything I do with magic is like thimble trick. What can I pair it with that doesn't necessarily work as a thimble? So, pudding. Okay, that works. So just taking two ideas and pairing them together, that's generally the starting point of any. Another example, kind of like the pudding, I do a classic bullet catch routine. I don't know if nobody knows, you put a bullet in a gun and they sign it and they point it at your face and shoot it and you catch it in your teeth. But I use as an old comedy prop a leaf blower with a paint roller duct taped to it and toilet paper shoved on it. And when you turn the leaf blower on, it shoots the toilet paper 20 feet. And so I load a signed dime into the toilet paper. They point it at my face across the stage and blow an entire roll of toilet paper all over me, but I catch the dime in my mouth. So it's the same idea. So, okay, I'm taking a bullet catch. What other weird thing can I pair with it that doesn't necessarily work together? But by pairing them, you get something interesting and different, and then know what other magician's doing. So that's always my starting point.
Well, I think that's a great starting point, Chris, and your genius and how your mind works, and that you're a lot like Amazing Jonathan out of Las Vegas.
He's a hero.
Yeah. He worked for me many times. I did a great interview with him. Everybody should go back and listen to it. It's amazing. You're taking a regular routine or an illusion, and what can I do to dress it up to make it more exciting, more funny, and different for the audience? Now, when you're adding comedy, did you find this? I would think it would work with kids, but adults as well. Did it help you interact and engage an audience?
Oh, the comedy?
Yeah.
Yes. And, I mentioned, I tried to make people cry during that script, and I realized, that's easy to make. But I've actually learned over time that I can make people feel and experience cry or sadness or any other emotion by starting with comedy. I find the easiest way is you make them laugh. By making them laugh, that is an emotional response. So you're bringing them on an emotional journey already. So then if you veer into something a little more serious or meaningful, they're more willing to go with it because they're already on an emotional path with you. And not only that, but they just making people laugh. That's such an amazing connection that they feel for you. They care about you. So again, when you veer into something more meaningful, I find it's a lot easier to do it. And it took me 20 years to realize that. But once I focused on comedy, I realized I can use comedy to veer into something else. I don't think that answered your question at all, but just to veer back.
No, it's great. It's great insight, Chris.
Yeah. I can't imagine, maybe somebody out there, I cannot imagine doing magic for children without comedy. You could definitely do magic for adults without comedy, but I would be shocked if I could see somebody perform magic without comedy for kids and last more than 15 minutes without the kids getting bored. So
right. But
definitely do that.
But being fair to the local neighborhood magician or something, there's a lot of magicians that get the thrill of entertaining in front of a group of kids or adults that are doing those magic tricks out of the magic kit, and they're basically memorizing the pattern that came with the joke. So even though there might be something funny in it, it's a huge leap to go from the, book prepared patter with the linking rings or the scarf trick, and being like you, creative. Now, some comic magicians will, as you said, will write unique patter to make the trick funnier and more engaging. You find I still like the term cartoon attitude, and use that to make the trick funny and unique and different from everybody else that does it. Because one of the things that's been discussed is that magic, there's only, I think, something like 7 or 9 true illusions, and it's it's what you do with them. And what I thought was interesting early on, you mentioned that when it comes to comedy, what comes first, the comedy or the illusion? You take a different aspect than a lot of the guys I've interviewed, because many of them, as you said, will take a trick and then what can I say to make it funny? And you approach it, and some people do this, but you seem to be very proficient at it. Taking an illusion and what can I do with the props, with the aspect of the illusion, and really turn it on its head. And I think that your description of taking two things that wouldn't normally go together, putting them together and presenting it, I just think that's genius, Chris. And no wonder everyone says you're funny.
Good. Well, I will say, because you mentioned scripting, and when it comes to children specifically, and this bleeds into what I do for adults, but when it comes to children specifically, I think it's almost like the death nail, or what is it, the nail in the coffin, to focus on what you're going to say. So you read the patter and you just do the patter and because that's a mindset of focusing on what you're saying. And if you want to make children laugh, instead you should focus on what you're doing. Because like if I had a bag and I showed it empty, I said, this bag is empty, like my bank account. You might get a chuckle from one parent somewhere, but kids are not going to laugh at that. But if I said, this bag is empty, I'll prove it. I'll put my hand and turn it inside out. And then in the process, like you push your fist in and punch yourself in the face, that kids are going to laugh a million times more harder at that than
I would laugh.
If it was somebody actually skilled at comedy, physical comedy, I am not a clown like that with the actual fit. I'm just stupid. But so with kids, I mean, I try to stress all the time. Like I see magicians doing magic for kids, and they just talk and talk and talk, and I'm like, no, you say like 2 sentences to get into the trick, and then it's all funny bits and wacky physical comedy throughout. And so when I build a routine for kids, I would almost call it more of an outline of the funny stuff I'm going to do throughout the trick. That that's what's going to make the kids laugh. I can kind of make the things I say don't matter as much because they're just excuses to get to whatever funny comedy thing I'm physically doing. But with adults, like I said, I start with that concept of mapping or taking a trick and finding the funny aspect in it to begin with. And then it's almost the same thing, but just beat by beat, I go through and I try to come up with like funny lines related to it, because I think adults respond a little more to the verbal comedy.
Yeah, but still, even in this day and age, everybody's got such a short attention span. I think that both kids and adults, especially young adults, but especially with children, the visual is something easy for them to relate to and go with. Hey, we were talking about how it's important using physical comedy in this day and age with everyone's short attention span. You're already very kind of cartoonish. You're bright, you're flamboyant, you're colorful. You really are a physical presence when it comes to your magic shows, which is great for adults and kids. But what are you doing when you talked earlier about having an illusion? What can I do to make it different and unique? You said you use an outline form. Can you explain that a little bit?
Well, there was a famous British comedy magician named Terry Seabrook, and he had one of my absolute favorite methods for creating comedy magic. I love anything that's just straightforward and basic. And so, and this was specifically for making adults laugh, but he would take a trick and he would write out beat by beat all the actions you had to take when you did it. Like if you're doing a card trick, somebody has to take a card, they put it back in the deck, you shuffle the cards, every single step you physically have to do to make the trick happen. And then once he made that little list, he would then come up, either write or find a comedy piece of dialogue to complement it that goes along, that matches up with it. So you wouldn't just say a random joke while having somebody take a card. You would write a joke specifically about the act of taking a card. And I just loved that concept because it's just so straightforward and easy. Like I just love anything that, even if I'm the biggest idiot on earth, I can do this. I like dumbing it down so I can make myself figure it out. And that's basically how I put together a routine. So like I mentioned in the last episode, I start from a place of figuring out what trick I wanted to do and finding out how to make that trick itself funny. But then I just make a list of every step I have to take to do that trick. And then I altered it when it comes to kids. But for adults, I pretty much do the same thing. I just write funny lines that coincide with each action that I'm doing. And then with kids, like I mentioned before, kids respond much more to physical comedy. So I make that same list, and instead of coming up with funny lines I'm going to say, I come up with just funny actions of how I'm going to do it. So instead of saying something funny while they pick a card, I do something funny. And that's basically my entire structure for how to build a routine, or how I build a routine.
Well, that's really valuable information. Thanks so much, Chris. And I think you're touching on many things, but what's really important for anybody that's interested in magic or comedy magic as a career is the understanding that it takes work, and not just the practice to get the trick down, but like you said, you outline the moves and then what you might say during those moves. But of course, as a professional, you also know how to work the room or work the person that you're doing the illusion with. But I think that it is important for everyone to understand that you should create a method to what you're going to present, and that if you are prepared and rehearsed when you do that for a live audience, it's always going to rock. Earlier, we talked about that you're less about the patter and more about the physical comedy. However, you're a successful playwright. I know you did some work in college. Can you share with the audience how you took your interest in comedy and magic and turned it into playwriting?
I got involved. I mean, I was doing playwriting, and after college, I went into I'm obsessed with musical theater. I kind of love musical theater also because I just think any art form you learn, whether it's magic, you should be learning art forms outside of whatever your main focus is. Like I've taken stand-up comedy classes, improv comedy classes, photography classes. I just think any other art form, they all work together. They all inspire each other. But one of the reasons I love musicals, I think, is kind of the same reason I love magic, which is, I'm going way off topic, but I'm going to keep going. You can cut out.
No, it's fascinating stuff, Chris. It's your show.
Back in the day, musicals were nothing more than like an excuse to get from song to song. And that's what, like, here's 20 Cole Porter songs. Let's write a random plot to just get from song to song.
That's so
and to
true.
Me, that's what a magic show is. A magic show is just, here's something I'm saying just as an excuse to get to the next trick. And now here's another random trick that I'm sort of getting us to. And then one day with Oklahoma, Rogers and Hammerstein came along and said, nope, we're going to write the music specifically for the plot. And the songs are part of the story and getting us from, it's not just the plot happens between the songs. No, the songs are the plot, part of the story. That has nothing to do with anything, but I try to bring my playwriting, that aspect, into the magic, where I try to make the magic kind of part of the story as much as all the things I'm saying between the magic. I don't even remember the question, but I got talking on musical theater. Sorry.
No, Chris, I think that you're sharing some good insights, because you've touched on the fact that you have to sit down and work at what you're going to do. You have to plan it out, outline it, write it out, and kind of give yourself a rehearsed script or action of what you're going to do. It makes any kind of show, whether it's stand-up comedy, comedy magic, or ventriloquism, whatever it is, it makes it that much better. But you became a playwright because you realized there's a connection between the art forms. And I think bringing that out in this conversation is so important. I'm a big fan of, ventriloquism and comedy magic, straight stand-up, prop comedy. I even once had a really funny tap dancer on my stage.
Oh, I would love that.
That was just a joy for me, and the audiences were entertained, and that's my job as a producer, is what mattered. But I think what you're sharing, even though you feel like you're wandering, is a good point, in that whether it's a magical show or a musical play, the idea is taking the audience along for a ride, creating a story that has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Now, in stand-up comedy...
thank you for making sense of what I was saying. Thank you.
Right. And in stand-up comedy, you grab the audience's attention with like your third best material, second best material. Then you take them for a ride, kind of the plateau of this show. And then you have a crescendo, or a big payoff, your closer, which is your best stuff. It's the same in comedy magic, and quite simply, it's the same as a playwright. You want to take the audience on a journey that ends on a really strong crescendo or upbeat. Am I right?
And I find that stand-up comedy is such a help with playwriting, and vice versa. so of course I focus on comedy when I'm writing playwriting. And one of my favorite tools, which I know stand-up comedians do this, is I will audio record the show, and then I'll listen and I'll go through the script. And anytime there's a laugh, I'll check mark it or highlight it. And then let's say I have a page with 2 laughs, one at the top, one at the bottom. I have an entire page in between. It's just part of why I love comedy. It's almost mathematical. You know, I get to literally look at this page and say, that's a line, those are both laughs. Either I need to get another laugh in the middle here, or I could just cut out the entire center of that page. And if it still makes sense, I just lessened the time. Yeah.
You edit for the timing and the joke. No, that's
and you
exactly
do that
what
in
comedy
stand-up
is.
comedy. If I have to take 5 minutes to get to a punchline, I better try to make that, 30 seconds, 20 seconds. I gotta, and it is kind of like what you said, especially today with attention spans. But I just think a lot of talking does not always, it just gets old, especially
No.
I feel like in magic.
You're absolutely correct. But staying on the topic of you as a playwright, I think that the fact that you're able to reach into the roots of why you're an entertainer, the comedy, the magic, the engaging an audience, and what you learned in college about script writing and doing that. Now you've successfully written several plays. I'm sure that was really rewarding.
Oh, so in New York, I was involved at a comedy theater. It was an off-Broadway theater, and I did a series of, it was kind of called Unauthorized, and they were all parody musicals. So there was one based on Back to the Future, Ghostbusters, Hunger Games, Still Magnolias. And what was so much fun about it is that I got to bring literally my magic sensibility in it, because magic is really just spectacle. So it was fun. I both wrote them, but I also directed them. So it was about, the entire script was about comedy lines, but the direct scene was about, if I just make you stand here instead of here, that will look funny. Like that will get a bigger laugh than if you say that line over here. So, and then just bringing, like in Back to the Future, the musical, which was called that 80s time travel movie, the musical, for copyright reasons, we had a DeLorean, the car, appear on stage, but it was just a bunch of pieces of cardboard cut out and spray painted silver, and people ran on stage with each piece, so the car formed together. And in essence, it's a magic trick, but it's just a theater trick, and it got a huge laugh and applause just because it's this weird physical, visual thing happening on stage.
Right, but it was connecting with the audience's memory of the movie. And, and it was a bit of a magic trick, and it was funny. I mean, in an earlier interview with Larry Wilson, we were talking about how it was movie magic, like one of the earliest films, Man in the Moon, where it was a magician doing tricks that made his movie worth watching, because it was a silent film, so it wasn't anything being said. It was the illusions and the magic that made the film worth watching. So now you fast forward 100 years, and you're taking memorable moments from hit movies, and by adding some magic and some comedy and your gift for playwriting, you turned them into shows. And I'm so excited for you. That's so creative and so rewarding.
Yeah. I mean, to have ideas in your head that you visualize, but to be able to like get a group of people together to realize it on stage and then to get to see it is, I mean, forget the audience. That's magic for me. Like to actually see a vision in your head come alive on stage is just an incredible feeling.
Yeah. Well, for me, so, my audience knows this, but you and I have not worked together, but as a comedy producer, a show producer, and I've done television, radio, and lots of live stage, it is so rewarding that when you envision a show or a piece of entertainment, as a producer, my reward is the joy it gives me to see those audiences laughing at what I put together. For, as a comedy club owner, I had to pick 2 or 3 acts that I thought would work well together and cross my fingers that it was exactly what the audience would enjoy. And 9 times out of 10, I was right. But as I've shared in other podcasts, it wasn't the show that I was watching. I knew the show. I'd seen the guys' acts 100 times. I watched the audience, and my joy came from seeing the audience engaging with something that I was presenting to them that was creative. And I think as a playwright, seeing the fruition of your work being acted out on stage had to just be so thrilling. Congratulations on all your success.
Oh, thank you. And, you bring up a good point, which is, I think it was Mac King, who's one of my heroes. He's a comedy magician. And he says that magicians have a thing called magic ears or magician ears. And the idea is like, they get off stage after their comedy show and you're like, how did it go? And I'm like, oh my God, they loved it. And then he was like, I just watched the same show. They didn't laugh once. What are you talking about? But your show now. So watch the audience. Like, they are giving you actual live feedback. Don't just sit there and go out there and want them to laugh and therefore you just decide that they did. No, watch them. The best part about comedy is you get your feedback immediately. If your show is introspective and makes people think, you don't necessarily know if it was successful. But if your goal is comedy, your answer is right there. You can literally watch your audience and see, if you're succeeding, which is to me the perk of comedy.
And to bring it back to magic, it's like, okay, I learned how to do this illusion. Let's say linking rings, and if you just went up and did the linking rings, even if you did the patter right out of the book and you got off stage going, hey, I succeeded. Well, did you? Because did it relate to the audience? Was the audience fooled? Did the illusion work? If you're not paying attention to the ambiance of the room and the reaction of the audience, you can't say that it's a success.
The nice thing about stand-up comedy is that y'all are, what's the word? I'm just going to say vicious, but that's not the word. You are steadfast, and you do original material. You don't copy other people's material. You don't. But magic is kind of built upon, it's an entire industry where people just do other people's material. If so-and-so did a joke 50 years ago in the linking rings routine, I guarantee magicians are still doing that joke now in the linking rings routine. I think it's important to watch your audience, because I guarantee I have been in so many audiences where the linking rings come out, and it's an audience of lay people. If you don't know the terminology, that just means non-magicians. I literally will watch the audience sink down in their chair and take a sigh, because they know they're about to sit through a 10-minute trick that they've seen a million times. Because we magicians have certain rules. One is they're called classics for a reason. That's one of our rules, which means the linking rings works. So you keep doing it because the audiences love it. And then the other one is, it's new to my audience. That is a line that, so a joke that was done 100 years ago and every magician has been doing it since, I can do it because it's new to my audience, which is something it never happened in the world of stand-up comedy. To me, both of those magic rules equal, just go ahead and be lazy. That's fine. Just do the old tricks that everybody's seen a million times. Do the same jokes. And I'm all for bringing out the linking rings and doing a routine. But you have to give me, an audience member who's seen this a million times, a reason to watch it. And that can be a new, interesting take on it. You could do it blindfolded. You could do it while floating in the air. I don't care. Or you can literally give me, it can be heartfelt, or like, I was always an outcast, even in the world of magic. But whenever I picked up these rings, I knew while I was practicing in my room that Harry Houdini held a set like these, and Thurston held a set like these. So bear with me for the next few minutes while I do this thing that gives me this connection to this world that I've always sort of been an outcast of, or something. I've just made that BS up right now. But like, if you give me a reason to watch it, now I'm willing to, sit up, stop sighing, and be like, okay, you've just given me an excuse to go with you on this journey. So it's just about, recognizing your audience and thinking about, like, as a magician, I've done a lot of magic conferences, conventions, and you do gala shows. And 90% of your audience at the end of a convention, it's going to be magicians. And I would never in a million years go out and do a trick that they've all seen before, or a routine with a trick that they have all read and they've all seen before. Because why would I do that? They all know that. They know that's not mine. So I would do something original and unique to me that makes them, other magicians, feel like they've seen something they haven't seen before. And to me, that is how I treat every audience. I imagine every audience as a room full of magicians. I'm not just going to sit there and show them something that any other magician could do, because why would they want to watch me?
Right. And I think that's why you're such a success and why I got referred to you as being one of the funniest guys out there. And I think you're so right. We've talked about it before. You're kind of the cartoon version of comic magicians, and might be doing the linking rings with baloney with a hole torn in the middle, or
literally, toilet bowl seats. It
makes it different. And the reason I got that example, and ladies and gentlemen, if you get a chance, go to ChristopherWBarnes.com. That's ChristopherWBarnes.com, and check out the amazing videos this guy does. Chris, you've got your own YouTube channel where you're doing the Magic Show. And you do some really funny stuff that I think is not, it's probably mostly driven for kids, but I found it very entertaining myself. I mean, when you were doing the pudding bit and doing pudding on the Ritz, I laughed out loud.
Good.
Just stupid physical comedy and visual comedy, but it works. So, ladies and gentlemen, go check out his videos. But how did you decide, as a already successful playwright and comic magician, to share your creative talents in kind of this cartoon version of comedy magic on YouTube? Share with the audience a little bit about that, if you don't mind.
Well, it's been recent because there was, I don't know if you know this, there was some kind of pandemic that happened.
Oh, there was, some cold flu going around.
Did you hear about that? Yeah. So everything was shut down for like, a long time, but like really shut down for like a good month there, where like literally nobody, you went to the grocery store, that was it. And, I am a creature of creativity and creation, and I just have to be working on something. And I just saw this as an opportunity to work on a show. I had no idea what it was going to be.
Well, for a COVID hobby, you did a great job. It's got a strong professional open. The music is great. The visuals are great. And, somebody's going to see this and realize your talents. It's only going to lead to more opportunities for you.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I hope.
The audience needs to go check them out. But did you find it kind of soothed that creative itch by doing this during COVID?
Yeah, 100%. And it's kind of like I talked about in the previous episode. The entire concept became, first of all, I had to figure out how to make it look as professional as possible without having any resources. Yeah. And so I went with I call it Jackass for Kids. That's my, so the idea is I'm doing stupid stuff, but I literally had my partner hold my iPhone camera, and I specifically said, do not hold it still. Make it look like, just move around a little so it doesn't look like we're trying to be professional. It looks like more of a guerrilla style shooting. But the entire concept is just, the first episode's pudding, the second episode's spaghetti. I think there's balloons, there's boxes, and I just take one random item and I just do a bunch of weird stuff involving magic, comedy, parody stuff. And it's just quick, very, very much made for our day and age, because I don't think anything goes over like a minute long.
Yeah, no, I think it was perfect. And we talked earlier about one of your heroes being Amazing Jonathan. And I think Amazing Jonathan, who is a comedy magic hero in Vegas in his almost 15 years of having his own stage show, but it's taking magic and comedy to the extreme. Amazing Jonathan would do anything like, staple something to his assistant's head. But In your case, you do add that kind of cartoon aspect of it. And
Yes.
I just want to tell you it works. And everybody should go check it out. It's on YouTube. Is it called The Magic Show Show?
It is called, it's a long title, The Christopher T. Magician Has a Show, but the easier way to find it, I have a website called yaytaco, so yaytaco.fun, so not .com, .fun.
Yaytaco.fun,
all the-
yaytaco.com.
And there's 10 episodes, and if you have kids, watch it. If you don't have kids, I don't know, drink some booze and then watch it. I think it'll one of my biggest inspirations ever is Pee Wee Herman. And I just love the fact that kids loved his show, but also adults who might be doing a little drugs or something on a Saturday night loved his show. And that was a big inspiration in putting it together. Hopefully,
I think that's a great connection because Pee Wee Herman was kind of a cartoon of humanity and comedy, and you do
can
that.
See him and me. That is such a big.
Oh, I definitely do. And what's great is that even though Pee Wee Herman was his cartoon self and was able to relate to kids and adults in comedy, I think you bring that in comedy magic. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this has been so much fun to learn about our guest, Christopher Barnes, who has been doing comedy and magic since he was like 8 or 9 years old. To this day, has been a successful playwright, has his YouTube show out there, yaytaco.com. And
.fun.
Oh, .fun. Oh, I missed that.
It's not even .com.
Oh, yaytaco.fun. Okay.
I couldn't afford .com. So.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, check him out. And now he's living in Los Angeles area and is available for shows. Chris, thanks so much for joining us on the podcast today.
Thank you so much. Hopefully I get to see you in person someday.
We'll have to work together. I'll get a show together and book you. It'll be fun. Ladies and gentlemen, we hope you enjoyed this as much as I did. Get a chance, check out ChristopherWBarnes.com or go to his YouTube channel and check out his videos. And thanks so much for being here, Chris. It's been great. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wow. That was sure fun for me. That was an interview I did for my other podcast, The Magic Hat, a comedy magic discussion. And Chris Barnes is just such a creative guy, from doing his comedy magic shows for kids to his work in New York as a playwright to his amazing videos that you can see at his website, ChristopherWBarnes.com. Just fun stuff. Thanks for letting me share this with you. We hope you had as much fun as I did doing the recording. Thanks for listening, and we'll be back next week with another great show. Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Stand-Up Comedy, your host and MC. For information on the show, merchandise, and our sponsors, or to send comments to Scott, visit our website at www.standupyourhostandmc.com. Look for more episodes soon and enjoy the world of stand-up comedy. Visit a comedy showroom near you.